Sneaky drink. Right, it's Friday. It's the 8th of November. It's episode 155. It's Chocy Chat. Got some stuff to do tonight. I'm going to show you how these work. So, people are posting some pretty amazing stuff. Christmas production is well and truly underway. Absolutely, truly amazing. Some really lovely little painting stuff going on at the minute. It's really fascinating to watch. I do see all of it. I scan through everything, although I've been a little bit busy. Busy boy. So, how is everybody? Kelly, I can see. Gina, Sofa Leg Chocolates. Billy, I can see. Alex Eats, how are you? Mother Baker there. Mother Baker, you all ready for the weekend? Asa is my nephew there in Jordan. How are you? The Blind Chocolatier, Stuart, how you doing? Paula's there. Paula's there up in Ilkley in Yorkshire. I was in Hull last week. Yorkshire, I think it is, once you got over the Humber Bridge. Who else is there? Hashim, walaikum salam, how are you? Alice, she's up the road. How is everybody? Mummy Baker, hello. Hello, online trying to buy pearls and see red is out of stock. What's the timing on the replenishment? Erin, give me a moment. I'll get those done this weekend. I'll get those done tomorrow. That's only just sold out. Yeah, there's a few things that are going faster than I can make them. That's one of them. And those are another. So it's how much I can stock up, as well as, I don't know, a bit off more than I can chew this week. The block, I'm going to talk about the blocks tonight, because I'm going to show people a little bit how to use these, how to get the best out of this, right? Because there's so many people who message me saying, you've saved Christmas. Like, I don't know if I've saved. It's just a solution for people. So we'll go into that one a little bit. But Erin, I will try and get those done tomorrow. The red cocoa pearls. I need to do all 5 colours, actually, in all honesty. So, who else have we got? Ronnie there, I think, in Denmark. Who else have we got? Hey, around the Rucker. You're at the Union Jack Club, lovely. Chocodilic there in Jersey, how are you? Temptation Chocolates then, I think it's Southern Ireland. Who else is there? Linda, hiya Linda. Everybody posting some amazing stuff. Ron's Bonbons, how are you? Ron's, what's with all the rockets? You've like abandoned chocolate and now you find rockets up to the sky, little Elon Musk you. Nadia's there, I should say Judith, how are you? Pom Coco, gosh, lots of names. But if you've got questions, fire away. I'm going to talk about the silk blocks tonight. We're going to talk about tempering, actually. We'll talk about what tempering is, because it's very confusing. I was with I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and they were talking about the 5-minute dip test, and I was just 5-minute dip test. So I'll explain what's going wrong with that. So somebody's saying, I know I'm late, but I wanted to thank you for the cleaning mould tips you shared a while ago. It's been a time saver for sure. Absolutely. That's what Chocy Chat's about, right? Little tips, little tricks, saving people time, people keeping working. Chocy Chat crew, we are all in the same boat. I know I'm a producer and we've got a little bit more experience, but we're all still in the same boat, right? We are still all just trying to run a business, get stuff done. And every little bit helps, right? And Chocy Chat's been fantastic for that on the Facebook page with people sharing. Billy sharing stuff this week on 3D printer files. Ronnie and I sat back and looked at it and just thought, this is absolutely amazing. Like, people are just sharing stuff that it would take them so long to meander down that path to get there. And then people are sharing their kind of hard work, but their intrinsic knowledge, because maybe they find it easier. But that's what Chocy Chat's about, right? Just all of us together moving forward, creating a great business, right? So it's all good. So it is all good. Tosca Chocolates, I think, is in Atlanta. That's Mario. Chocolate Creams in Iran. How are you, mate? I am really good. Busy, broken, bit off more than I could chew this week. Savory Eats is in Tucson. That's Michelle. She's on Tucson, Arizona. She was here for a class not so long, actually. It is all good. Right, Chocolates by Neander. Just send some hellos and some waves out, and I'll get talking about what I was going to talk about tonight. When I save this, I've done a little. I think it's a screensaver. What is it? A little profile picture of what this chat was about. So I'm sure I'll answer other questions tonight. But I wanted to talk about these. So I launched these this week. I got couple of people grumble about the price of it, and it's like, oh, come on. Well, I'm barely making anything on this, and it's time consuming to do. What it is a solution because people can't get hold of Micro. And I know I got lots of messages saying, it's easy to make. Yes, for some people it's easy to make silk. It's easy, it is. But they either don't have the equipment, don't want to invest into it, or they're just making a few bits and pieces for Christmas, would rely on Micro and can't get it, which is why we did that. It's a solution, that's what it is. It's an 80-gram bar, and it's an 80-gram bar. That's enough to temper 8 kilos of chocolate. Theoretically, that's enough to temper 8 kilos of chocolate. It's only baby. The biggest challenge I've had is we set them into the bars, and then I have to weigh them. Then I had to add a little bit more to it because they get done in massive sheets. And trying to measure that, it ain't fun at all. So we're fully stocked up now. There's a whole shelf of it up there. So what you would do, so what is tempering? Because I get this, I've heard everything over the years, facing north, yellow trousers, blue dog, the whole thing, you know what I'm talking about. When it has an abundance of, so chocolate or cocoa butter, chocolate in particular, chocolate's in temper when it has an abundance of beta crystals in there. There are some temperatures that we don't want to go above. So if we take tempered chocolate and we warm it, okay, as soon as we get to 33.8, all those beta crystals are melted. In fact, on that journey warming up, those beta crystals will be damaged based on how aggressive that heat is. So if you put chocolate in a microwave and you get hot spots, it's likely you're going to melt a lot of those beta crystals, right? If we warm it up really, really gently, really, really slowly, as it warms up, we will damage some of those beta crystals, and the beta crystals are just a giant mesh of filaments that when it cools down, they will crystallize much, much faster together. And the other thing it will do is it will shrink, okay, because all those fine filaments, when they cool down and they kind of drop below 14 degrees, they shrink, which is why your shells come out of the mold, right? So without the beta crystals, we've kind of just got chocolate. The other thing is, if we melt chocolate to, say, 34, 35 degrees, if we pour it on the table, it's still going to be liquid in an hour. If we've got chocolate that's got beta crystals in it, and the beta crystals are made from the cocoa butter, so if it's got beta crystals in it and we pour that on a table, we'd expect it to dry and kind of start crystallizing within a few minutes, right? So this is, you know, what is tempered, what isn't. It's tempered when it has an abundance of crystals, beta crystals in there, and it's also in temper when you've observed those temperatures. As it cools down, it doesn't go out of temper. As it cools down, it will thicken because that's the fat solids and the cocoa butter solidifying, and as crystals solidify, they have the appearance of looking like they're thicker. So with Micro, it's in a really, really fine powder. I'm going to say there's lots of hellos here, and I'm missing you all, but I'm going to carry on chatting, right? So because we've got people in New Zealand, Australia, there's people everywhere. I'm going to say some hellos in a bit. Let me just see where we're at on there, and then I can scroll back because I know it's all going to jump forward. So using that, we would melt the chocolate to whatever temperature you want to melt it to. If you want to melt it to 35, if you want to melt it to 40, absolutely up to you. Melted is melted. What we can't do is add any beta crystals to it until it's dropped below 34 degrees, right? And that is really, really important, because I don't want to add beta crystals to a chocolate that's too hot, or we will just damage all the beta crystals and they'll be gone. And you can't see whether they're in there because we can't see them with the human eye. We'd need to look at them under a microscope. So you have to trust the process. And for all chocolatiers, trusting the process is that temperature. We can't guess temperature, we have to measure it. We can't guess weight, we have to measure it. So melt the chocolate. Chocolate's melted. I generally, even the melting tanks, I'll melt chocolate to 35 degrees, and then we'll put it into bowls so it's measured, and we'll add the silk and do it that way. With this one, slightly different. Treat this like you would Micro, and it's in a solid block, okay? It's in a solid block. When that reaches 34, this is really, really important. Melt it to whatever temperature you want to. Once that gets to 34, we'll open that up. And we need, for every kilo, we need 10 grams. So there's 80 grams there, so that's enough for 8 kilos. Let's assume we got 1 kilo in there. The type of grater you want, there's a couple on the market. That is a really fine mesh microplate. That one is a little bit bigger, okay? With that one, I can grate quite hard and we'll get very, very fine flakes on it. With that one, what I'm going to do is I'm just not going to push quite so hard. So we'll do it really lightly. Get your kilo of chocolate, put it on your scales, or if you need to, get a piece of paper, put that over your scales, and then grate that in. But you want to grate it as fine. Get that as fine as you can, the lightest flakes. It's much easier to put the chocolate on the scales, okay, and then grate the silk into it. Once that's in there, you want to give it a really good stir through. What you don't want to do is be pressing really hard and get massive chunks, because the bigger those pieces are of that, the harder it is going to be to blend that in and get that to melt, which is what's going to temper or seed your chocolate, right? So we'll give it a good stir in, okay? If you still see tiny little lumps, there's a couple of things I do as well. If I'm using silk, I've got one of these special little whisks. This is nothing special about this at all. It was an egg whisk, and it had a nice handle on it, which I have no idea where that's gone. If I'm using silk from the incubator, we'll add that to the chocolate and I'll give it a good whisk, all right? If not, we will just stir it in if the silk's quite fluid. If I'm doing bigger amounts, we'll get a bit of machinery on it, okay? So you've got a couple of options. If you got a kilo of chocolate and you add your 10 grams from the bar, grated really lightly, you're going to stir that through. You might see that when that drops down to 33, 32 degrees, you might see that you've got tiny little flakes in there, and you've got a couple of options. If you then try to raise the warmth on this, you have to be really careful. If you put that in the microwave, you're probably going to destroy, you get hot spots, and you'll probably destroy a lot of the beta crystals in there. Remember I said right at the beginning, the warm up is where all that damage is done. Everything we do as chocolatiers, there's going to be lots of people nodding heads now. Everything we do is about protecting beta crystals and the temperature, right? What I would suggest you do, if you have the silk, if you grate the silk block into your chocolate and you stir it through, right, or blend it, whatever it is you want to whisk it through, you can use this, use a stick blender, and you can blend that through. The challenge you've got is the amount of friction that this adds. Your 34-degree chocolate, if you put that in, and even if you give that 20-30 seconds, it's highly likely your chocolate's just going to hit 35, 36, okay? So I'd use a stick blender when we're down at the 32 mark, but I certainly wouldn't be using it if we're nearer to the 34 mark, right? What I don't, these will add a lot of friction heat to that. So the trick is really just to warm it with a hairdryer. Really gentle heat. Take your time. Really gentle heat. Warm the surface of that chocolate and then continue blending with a stir, with a whisk if you've got it, until you see all those tiny little pieces gone. Once you're happy that that's kind of, if that's around about the 33, 32 and a half mark, all you've got to do now is stir that through, tap any bubbles out, and then just wait for this to get to 32 degrees. We've added the beta crystals to it, fact, because you put them in, I saw them go in there. As long as you haven't done anything too damaging to this, let me just get rid of this icon that's come up. As long as I don't do anything too damaging to this, you can store it in the fridge, not a problem at all. If you store it in the fridge, before you use it, just leave it at room temperature. What you don't want is to have this really cold, because we'd be adding cold cocoa butter to warm chocolate and it would just never melt in at all. Very fine temperatures, all right? So 1 kilo, we add the 10 grams, we'll blend it in. If we use a stick blender or electric blender, you just need to be very careful of friction heat. We are always measuring it. We would tap the bubbles out of it. I use all chocolate at 32 degrees. A little bit controversial. Some people go, you're wrong. Well, I make a lot of chocolate. I make a lot of bonbons. I've taught a lot of people to make bonbons, thousands now, I think, in the last couple of years. If I've got milk, white, dark, ruby, we don't use ruby, but caramelized, so all 5 types of chocolates, I will shell. So when I'm shelling, I prefer a 4-drop chocolate, so we will adjust the chocolate so that it's at that fluidity. Milk, white, dark, ruby, caramelized, we'll use all of them at 32 degrees. And it's kind of like we're using the bag in the opposite direction. Let me grab a bag. With this one, we're melting it to 45. Well, that doesn't matter anymore, because what we're going to do is melt it to 34. We're going to add the silk to it. We're not going to warm it up, we're actually using it on the cool down. So because we're using it on the cool down, I'm going to try and avoid warming it up unless I really have to. And if I do need to warm up the chocolate, we're going to do it really gently, really, really delicately with a low amount of heat, and we're going to take our time. If you're in a hurry and you give chocolate and you want to seed it, once the beta crystals are in there, once you've added the silk or micro, whatever you want to do, once you've added that in, if you heat that too aggressively, you're just going to melt the beta crystals, which are in the cocoa butter. So we just want to kind of slow down what's that warming stage. And the dip test, it's called a dip test, right? I talked about this a couple of episodes back. We stick the palette knife in and then we wait 5 minutes to see what that's like. But the problem is that starts setting as well. So what students do is they give that a massive big warm up, potentially break all the beta crystals that are in there. And then they look at their stick and go, look at my lovely tempered chocolate. That's just chocolate that's cooled down. If you wanted to see whether it tempered or not, you'd be able to peel that off to see the reverse of it, because that's what's happening. The chocolate you can see would be the chocolate that you look in, right? Not the chocolate on this side, which is likely to retract away. So the dip test, I think you have to be confident. If you've adhered to all the rules of temperature, we're going to warm the chocolate till it's melted and we're going to get it to 34. So if you warm it to 38, you're going to wait ages. If you warm it to 45, you're going to wait ages for it to get back to 34, changing bowls, doing that kind of thing. When it's at 34, we can grate that in really, really gently, 10 grams per kilo. Blend that in. If there's little specks that haven't blended in, we'll give it a really, really gentle warm. If you want to use that, be very careful because you're going to add friction heat. So for every kind of 20-30 seconds of blending it, you're going to add a degree, which once we go over 33.8, we've melted the beta crystals. And we need the beta crystals. And I want you to think of beta crystals in chocolate as a big mass of cotton candy, like candy floss, right? If you get a big chunk of candy floss, cotton candy, and eat it, it disappears. It's gone. It's literally gone. If you have ever been unlucky enough to have been out in the rain with candy floss, like you look at it and you get a raindrop and it's gone, right? It's disappeared. And that's kind of how delicate it is, and that's how delicate the beta crystals are. Too much aggressive heat is what ruins it, which is why I'm not a big fan of heat guns, right? So heat guns, just too hot. Fine if you've got a melting tank and you just want to melt out all those beta crystals so that you can get it back to its good fluidity, but then you've still got to take care of that temperature on the cool down. So once we've got those beta crystals in there, we're using the chocolate on the cool down. Once that reaches 32, 32.1, 32.2, what you can't do is shell with chocolate that's above 33.4, 32.4, because if you tip that in, when you turn it upside down, all the colour will drip out as well, and we don't want that. We don't want that happening at all. Once it reaches 32, we'd shell. Okay. Anything that remains on the silicone mat, once we scraped everything out, we can warm that up really, really gently, really gently. But if you take that, if you warm up that too aggressively and you melt those beta crystals, again, you can't see them because you can't see it with the naked eye. What you need to do is go back through the process. So melt it to 35, wait for it to get to 34, add some more chocolate to it possibly, and then go with some more silk, but or the silk block. What I would say with that one, you can keep that in the fridge, not a problem at all. Keep it in the fridge, just keep it airtight, Ziploc bag. Just bring it back to room temperature. They're rock hard. They're absolutely like concrete because it's tempered cocoa butter, but it's over tempered, so it's absolutely over tempered silk. When I put it into the mold to set it, takes about a minute before the whole block is absolutely solid, and I can peel them out. It's really quite aggressive silk when it's after it's incubated. So just grate it very lightly. You don't want to be forcing it through like it's parmesan. You just want to do really, really gentle. You want to get those flakes absolutely as small as you can get and as fine as you can get. And as I said, like with the micro, I solved this problem for somebody recently because they said I add the micro and then I stick blend it, and I said, have you ever measured the temperature after you've blended it? They're like, no. It's like, maybe you want to have a go at that. And that was the problem. They were melting the chocolate, they were adding it at 33, given it a good stick blend, and the chocolate was just, the friction of this was just taking it up to kind of 37, 38. It's like, oh, while you were blending it, you melted all your beta crystals, which we need. So trusting the process is that I can feel something go, oh, I think that's about 33, but we're talking about 0.1 of a degree is the difference between it working and not, and we all know that in chocolate. All of us know that in chocolate, that it can't be roughly 34. Either 34 it isn't, right? And if you haven't measured it with a thermometer, then you don't know what temperature it is. So I hope that helps. So when I save this, there's a little square just so people can find it again. So let's go for some questions. 1 second, I've got to scroll. It's all about the boxes tonight, isn't it? Let me just scroll back. Oh, there's so many comments, so many. I'm going to say some hellos out. I need to. Wait. Right, here we go. Okay, a couple of questions that came up. Hello, everybody. If I haven't said hello already, Chocolate by C. Who else? There's loads of names here. There's 50 people watching at the minute. So, oh, it's just jumped forward again. Give me a chance, right? Right, finally making chocolate again. Too long a break, but too much else sometimes in life. So much fun to be at again. Chocolate's one of those things you can pick it up, put it down. I think losing your mojo is a tough one in life. There is nothing wrong with stopping for a bit and just like you don't have to be in love with this craft all the time. Actually, ego, right? The opposite of ego is humility. And sometimes you need to show a little bit of humility to your craft, because people with a big ego, even when they don't like doing it, they'll just pull their effort into it and they just end up producing kind of rubbish tats, stuff that they think's good but nobody else does. Kind of, if you lost your mojo, I think you've got to stop and go and do something else, which is absolutely fine, then come back to it. Happens to everybody. Absolutely happens to everybody. I think it's learning to recognise those signals, right? That just need to just take a step away from it and then try and discover why it is that you fell in love with doing chocolate, because eventually it will come back, right? I think chocolate work is one of those crafts that you can stop for a few weeks and then feel like you're missing it, but when you're doing it every single day and it's just on the treadmill, you can kind of fall out of love with it. And I think it's all crafts, whether that's art, painting, singing, doing music, playing the guitar, they're all those kinds. Sometimes you need to put those tools down, walk away for a bit, and then come back even better, right? Right, James, I slow roast my cocoa beans approximately less than 120 on the stovetop. That is aggressive heat on a stovetop. Because it's too direct. It's too direct, Emily. A lower oven at 120. It's very, on a stovetop in a pan, it's very difficult to get exact at 120 because you've got quite aggressive heat coming up with conduction underneath, right? So, whereas in an oven, it's convection, it's more radiation, so it's warm air passing around all of it, and it's a little bit more even. But roasting the beans on the stovetop, I guess you mean like on a wok, it's probably just too much heat. There's a danger you'll burn them. There's also a danger that they will crack and you'll burn off some of those flavour notes, right? Hello, dear Chocy Chat crew. What beautiful new packaging you have. I wasn't going to show this tonight because I wanted to. They're nice. I've not put chocolates in them yet. I've got some moulds here. We got some moulds. Sophia did these for me today. I didn't do these. Let's try and get these down. Sophia did these for me today. She's a talented girl. Sophia did these. That was the breakfast out with the copper. So Sophia, and then she did that one. She did some ripples with. I tell you what she used. She used the deep space and then sprayed it with copper, right? So I'm looking forward to seeing that one because I've not seen that one. Sophia did that today, so I was a bit busy with other things. it's quite nice. I can hand that over to somebody else, but they're going to be family chocolates, so I'll let Sophia turn those out. Don't have a roasting oven. A wider pan. A wider pan, and just keep moving it, but it's very difficult to get an accurate temperature of 120 on a stove top. It's much easier to set the temperature of an oven if you can, or I'm trying to think of a way around that. Let me have a think, Emily. I might have to come back to you on that one if there's a different way that we can do that. Actually, one of the nicer ways I've seen people doing it is over a flame. They have a basket which they turn, a bit like how they roast the coffee. They put them in these big barrels and then toast them that way, so nothing is in direct contact with the heat at any time, right? So Ethan there. Who else have we got? I made some silk using sous vide and froze it in ice cube trays. Should I defrost or use frozen and great? I wouldn't put cocoa butter in a freezer. I wouldn't. It will suck up a lot of moisture. The other thing is when you bring it out of the freezer, it's just going to get absolutely soaked in condensation. So if you've done silk, you put it in the ice cube trays, just leave it at room temperature. It will solidify within minutes on its own. If you want to grate it, yeah, I'd just make sure that they're back at room temperature. I'd make sure they're back at room temperature. How you doing? How you doing, Jason? Hello in Austria. House of Desserts. House of Desserts is in Innsbruck. Tags me in lots of really amazing chocolate. It's the chocolates are amazing. The backdrop of the mountains behind you is even more impressive. I love Innsbruck. It's one of my favourite places. I grew up and lived down that area for quite a big chunk of my life. So I do like the mountains. I do like Austria. I like the East Tyrol. I like Innsbruck. Vienna's pretty as well. All of it. That whole Tyrol region. Tosca chocolate. So Mario's saying, if using silk incubator, can you leave the cocoa butter in there for an extended time? And what type of cocoa butter to use and not to use? That's a real tough one. So we have 6 incubators going. 2 that we use in production, 2 that we use as backup, all right? So we will feed from 2 of them into the 4, and they're done in mass. We have it done, like in here, it's in slightly different ways. So I've got some that is in, that's a piping bag full, right? So that's its first stage, and then from there it will go into the cans where I can really blend it and make sure that it's fully blended and we haven't got chunks and bits and pieces in it. In terms of what cocoa butter to use, I don't know. It's a tough one because you kind of got to use what's available to you in the market. We buy a specific cocoa butter that works for the colours. So I didn't do this. Mrs. So Sassy did this. She bought as many different varieties as she could get. So when we were doing the trial and development stuff, easily a year before we started, we looked at all these different ones and what were the qualities I were looking for, because I wanted them to be more fluid at a lower temperature. That was key for me to be able to airbrush. I think the reason for the success of this is that you can use them at a lower temperature. So around about the 26 degree mark, they're still fluid, where other butters aren't. You've got to warm them up to 29, 30 to get them fluid enough. And it's to do with the impurities and other conditions of that butter. Also the growing region. You know, Indonesian cocoa butter is rock hard, but it's not very fluid even at 28, 29 degrees. So you'd need to be using it. Whilst I don't doubt it's the best one on the planet in terms of its flavour and its profiles, you need to use it at such a high temperature that it's dripping out the moulds, because we can't get the moulds cool enough. So I had this trade-off of, in terms of the best one to buy, is what's available to you, and they will behave very differently. Mine in here is set at 32.4, okay, which is very low. So at 32.4, mine is squashy and really good to use. If I got another brand, I was talking to somebody about this today as well, via messaging. They've got a brand of cocoa butter, and even in their incubator at 33.6, it's still not soft enough, and they're kind of like, what do I do? I don't really know the answer. I think the challenge is you have to get the cocoa butter that's available to you and use that, and ask yourself, the temperature of the machine and the temperature of the butter are two different things, right? So the machine, that just tells you what the parameters are set at. And I believe that with easy temper, it will be 0.2 degrees above or below that aimed for temperature. Another question that got asked today, I think on the page, I may well go through and answer this one tomorrow. When you're doing it sous vide, they've set the water at like 30, I think 33.4, and then vac packed it and then drop that in. But the problem is it just melts the cocoa butter. What you want to be doing is starting a couple of degrees lower than that, so that the cocoa butter first goes soft, and then take it up to that incubation temperature of whatever it is, 33.4, and then hold it at that temperature and keep moving it. I think one of the important things with silk is you need to go in there a couple of times a day and give them all a really, really good stir, a really good agitation, right? And blend them. I have a smaller blender, much half the size of this, very, very thin, with very, very sharp blades on it, that I can go in and just completely blend those, but not for too long because it adds heat. And I don't want to damage the crystals, but it's hard for me to say which is the best cocoa because mine is not for sale. Mine is for sale as colours, not as a raw product. Get the one that's available to you. It's very easy for me to say, well, you should buy this one, you should buy this one, if it's not available to you in the volumes that you need, right? Cookumania Scotland, hello. I've been cooking with a sous vide stick for a while now. We did our first silk that was later turned into micro, and it worked amazingly well. Thanks for the Chocy Chat on this Facebook group. Absolutely. And I made these blocks for the people that don't have those resources or don't have the skill or inclination, and they just need an answer. Somebody did ask here, if you put that bowl in the fridge so it's nice and cold, and then grate that into it completely, and then have a clip-on lid, you can store it already grated, not a problem at all. Just if you store it in the fridge, the problem is it's too cold. So when you add it to the chocolate, it will just never melt through. So it kind of ideally needs to be at room temperature. I bought a digital martello to temper, but shells are too thick. So just going to use it as a melting tank and take one batch out at a time and temper. Unless you have any other suggestions. Salford chocolate is exactly what I do. I don't find melting tanks particularly accurate. I did the cricket balls week before last, and I just thought I'd measure it. So I set the machine up for 35 degrees. At one end it was 37, and then at the other end it was 34. And even when I blended the chocolate and really gave it a good move around, I still had 37 at one end. And it's a melting tank. It's used for melting chocolate. If I do temper in it, and I have done, the challenge I have is that I'm then I'm tipping cooler chocolate back. So we'd set the machine at 30, so we'd add silk and we blended it through, and it was fine. I actually had to turn the machine off at one point just to turn the heat off, because I could hear it keep clicking on and off. The problem is, once I've added chocolate to this and it's cooled, and I tip that into the tank's cooling down, so then I've got to warm it up. So it didn't work for me. That's the melting tank. I add the 1.7, 1.8 kilos into here. We'll add the 18 grams of silk, blend it, and then shell the 4 moulds, and everything from here gets tipped back into the melting tank and blended through, because the melting tank is out of temper because it's at higher temperature, it's above 34 degrees. So we'll blend that through, and if I need to, it gets a little bit too thick and I'm going too fast, we'll put a heat gun on it. And we'll just break down all that over tempered chocolate, get it back to a nice fluidity. We'll add that, we'll use that if we need to, just go around the melting tank, blend it all through. It's all about fine temperatures. I don't think you need to shell fast. I think you need to shell accurately and make sure you've got clean edges and a clean mould, and take all those steps so that you don't get to the end of your shelling process and you've got to clean up, and it kind of looks like a kitchen fell over, right? I always get this question, it's like, how long does it take to spray a mould? Totally up to you. If you've got lots of moulds, set up efficiently. If you only got a few moulds, it's going to be quick. But there isn't a, no, I don't know how long Sophie. Sophia did these. It took her a couple of minutes to do each one, not much more than that. And this one, we flicked all this in, cleaned the mould off, and then she stood that in the fridge for 30 seconds on its side, and then she went in with the breakfast app, and then cleaned that off. But I want a nice clean mould, and then when I shell, I want a nice clean mould, and then when we cap, I want a nice clean mould so we can give it a warm, clean it, put it back on the shelf. So I don't think there's smooth is fast and fast is smooth, right? We know this from the gun industry or shooting, people that do competition shooting. It's not going the fastest, it's going the most accurately, right? Oh no, Jason, I feel you. Cheers. That haven't made chocolates, Chocky, in 3 weeks. Set it up last night, looked at it, took it down. It's absolutely fine if sometimes you're not feeling it. I am burning both ends of the candle at the minute, and I'm absolutely, truly aware of it. I am at full speed all day, every day, just keeping up with orders. Brilliant, and not complaining. But I'm not going to lie, sometimes you're like, maybe some days, I've just taken on too much. And then I decided to launch those. Because that's me. And once I get an idea, I'm off, I'm gone. That's my, And I said to Rennie, can you get this on the website? She went, not right now. I'm like, no, you need to do it now. People need this, people are stuck. I think I need to review all Chocy Chat videos from episode 1 to 155. I said what I might do is just go back and pick some random ones and say, like, here are the questions from. Instagram doesn't really save it in a format that's helpful because you can't write all the information in there, which is a kind of disappointing element of it. I know we talked about exploring whether we would use YouTube, but it also turns out that all the conversation that's here doesn't get saved either. And if you join Chocy Chat live, you can say hello to everybody, but also there's lovely conversations going on in between, which I get to see and read out. You got to join the lives, right? What incubator are people using to make silk? I've tried a couple of things, haven't managed. Easy Temper. Easy Temper will make silk, and I will use it. In terms of sous vide, I will do a video for it. I saw a video on somebody else's page, and I was shaking my head, and it's like, oh dear me, those temperatures are so far out. Like, add the silk at 36 degrees. I'm like, okay. All right, maybe don't do that. I think it mentioned 37 degrees at one point as well. So there's a bit more to it than that. If you want to look, you can melt cocoa butter really, really soft and get something that looks like silk, but it might not have the abundance of beta crystals in it. And the only way to test it is to take some out. If you're making silk sous vide, take some out, wipe it on if you've got a mirror or a glass sheet or a glass tile, or even if you've got a nice kind of granite marble slab, wipe it on there and give it 30 seconds, and it should take a huge amount of effort to try and scrape that off the table. I mean a huge amount of effort. Silk will set like concrete in seconds once it's on a cool surface. So that's the way you would test it. Right. Happy days. Right. Hello, Renner. Are the family chocolates available to order when we place my order this weekend? They always seem to be out when I'm ordering. Erin, no, I haven't got anything at the minute. I've been waiting for this packaging to turn up because we ordered that at the start of August, believe it or not. So we're kind of 3 months in, and it is a slow process. And I didn't know what I was going to do, whether I was going to commit to the old packaging. This, they told me, wasn't going to appear until kind of start of December, and I was starting to have kittens. We will start some chocolate production next week once I've got everything out of the way. But this stuff is it's absolutely full on. I will do some chocolates next week. We'll do a collection, and I've already got pre-ordered stuff and contract stuff. So Sophia's going to be busy next week. Sophia's going to be a busy girl next week. She's got all her bars to do as well, right? Yeah. Daniel, hello. Melissa's joined us. Hi, Melissa. Melissa's just had some of the lovely luster dust up. She did a lovely photo. I'm in my first chocolate block. Someone told me it's best to store not in the refrigerator. Depends on your outside temperature. Look, if you need to store chocolate in the fridge, in the refrigerator, it's fine. It just needs to be Ziploc bag. And then there's no problem with storing it in the fridge. But there is a problem taking it out of the fridge and eating it because it's too cold and you won't get those flavours. The other thing is that when it comes out of the fridge, condensation will cling to it. So put it in a Ziploc bag, make sure it's airtight so no other odours can get in there. If you're in a country where the average daytime temperature is 32 degrees, then no, you can't store it at room temperature. It just isn't going to work, right? So, and I see this advice all the time. So if you're in a hot climate, yeah, you need to store them in air conditioning full time, or you need to store them in a fridge and then take them out, let them come back to room temperature, and then nibble them. You don't want to store it in the fridge unless it's airtight because it will take on all the water like a sponge. Emily, again, it depends on your room temperature. Quick question. Cherry cordials, Invitas in fondant, so liquid centre with cherry. All good, but leaking through the caps. Using milk chocolate. Any ideas to stop? Dark chocolate cap, double cap, a thicker cap. Depends on the edges. Leakage from the edges of the caps will be to do with how that edge formed, and whether you've got a very, very good seal. I think the challenge with cordials is it can go very, very liquidy. So when you add the Invitas, because it's an enzyme, right, and it eats away at the carbohydrate, so the fondant eventually becomes a liquid. But if you've got too much Invitas in there and you put the powder in and you massage it in and, you know, do round little balls and then you drop them in and then cap, right, if you got too much Invitas in there, you know, we never used to check them until day 7. But if you looked at them at day 3 and they were liquid, you just knew it was going to be an absolute nightmare batch, right? I don't know. It's the cap leaking will be to do with shells too thin, or poor capping, and poor capping can be the cap's too thin. The chocolate is too well tempered, so it's shrunk. If chocolate is too well tempered, right, so aggressively tempered, when you put the cap on, it's going to retract, and that's what will cause all the cracks. So we want to take chocolate and warm it up to 33 carefully, and as we warm it up, do you remember I said right at the beginning, as we warm chocolate up, we start damaging some of those beta crystals. There will be some beta crystals left, you just don't want the full amount, because if we try and cap with that kind of chocolate, if it cools down too quickly, it will shrink, and it will either you'll end up with bullseyes, or if it's a very thin cap, it will crack down the middle, which isn't noticeable when you're using Invitas and fondant because it's solid when it goes in. As it turns into a liquid, because the enzyme eats away at the carbohydrate or the sugars that are in there, you discover on day 6 and day 7 that there's just leakage everywhere, right? That's one of the challenges of cordials. That is one of the challenges. So. Emily, yeah, you can store the chocolate blocks in there, but just they need to be airtight. So Ziploc bags, just make sure they are absolutely sealed and airtight. When you take them out of the fridge, just leave them for an hour so that it can come back to room temperature. Okay. Erin, that's a good idea. That would solve it. One of the things that we used to do with cherry cordials, before we had polycarbonate molds, because we used to have these horrible bloody iron things, right, which would always go rusty, so before you did anything, you had to buff all the rust out. Oh, just life in the 80s, right? Cloth piping bags that smell, I can't even begin to tell you. We would take those, because they were cast metal molds, right, and they were always an odd shape, like a duck or a chicken or something, or the little squares kind of looked like it had a cherry on top, but it didn't. It looked something much more crude. We would put chocolate down and just hand dip the bottom part of it and lift it across, right, just to make sure we had a good seal. This is a challenge with cordials, not something I do a huge amount of, right? Hello in West Texas, how are you? America's had a tough week, haven't they? I'm not going to go into politics tonight, but around the world, people have had to make some tough decisions, and their choices, the two that they've had to choose from, aren't brilliant, are they? The world is in an absolute fucking horrendous mess right now, isn't it? And it's men in suits, unqualified men in suits that think they know everything, making decisions that affects the rest of us, and we can't do anything about it. And it's just such a sad state of affairs around the world. We've not advanced, have we? We have not advanced. Anyway, back to chocolate. Had some issues with luster dust staying in the mould, and all the other coloured cocoa butters have been fine, just the luster dust doesn't want to play. You putting enough? I don't know. You putting too much in? Thank you. I was just showing them your amazing work. Come and say hello.
Hi, Chocy Chat.
We go from orange. Here's a trick, because we talked about this earlier, right? That one, that side, that orange is Salma's orange, and then that one is Hello Sunshine, because we want a little bit of glitter in it. Flipped all the black in there, right? But we had to back it with white. And the reason we had to back it with white is so I could get the orange to come through. If I'd shelled that with dark chocolate, well, that's going to have dark chocolate in it, because it's going to have a lemon caramel in it, that one. If I'd done that with dark chocolate, those two colours would have been too dark. I did have another option, and we could have used the Seren's Bright, and then the other yellow we could have used Lemon Tree, right? But we didn't. I grabbed those two because I want a little bit of sparkle in it. So we had to back it with white. So it goes from yellow all the way to orange.
Tangerine.
And so tangerine. And Sophie just brought me more Ribena.
You all out.
Because everybody that knows me,
knows
I like fig rolls and I like Ribena. And I like chocolate. And I like Chocy Chat crew. I like all the people in Chocy Chat.
Absolutely.
Amazing
Who
people in Chocy
wouldn't
Chat
love
crew.
Chocy Chat?
Luster dust staying in the mould. Maybe putting too much in. I think what I do with the... Certainly never had a problem. And I've got quite a few hundred people that we sell a lot of luster dust. So it might be the application. You want to dab it in, don't twist. You need to dab it in. Try not to tap too much of it out. Okay, because it's very, very fine layer. But we will give that mould a wipe just so I haven't got luster dust everywhere. I'm normally walking around with it all over me anyway. I don't know why it'd be stuck in a mould unless you're putting too much in there. What we'd normally do is do a sponge and it will do 4 or 5 or 6 moulds before we need to dab that brush again. It's only a fine layer. I don't know, I can't think why that. Ours doesn't have any flour in it. So ours is pure silicate. I know that you know, again, the research with the brand was, you know, we were trying to buy this stuff and they were like, do you want rice flake in it? I'm like, what does that even mean? And they're like, yeah, we can double the volume. We just add some rice flour to it. I'm like, no, thank you. And then when we looked at the two, it's like, oh, the ones with rice flour doesn't stick in polycarbonate. So you dab it all in, you turn it over and it all comes out. And they're like, well, that's a little bit of a con, isn't it? That's not the route that I want to go with my business. So we just did the pure silicate mica, which does stick to polycarbonate. And then when you shell, it should mirror that surface and be lovely and shiny. If you put too much in, you'll end up with little cracks and voids and it can look a little bit. But chocolate temperature doesn't really play a part. You can, you know, with cocoa butter, we need to be shelling over 31 and a half ideally, regardless, just because we've got to melt that layer of colour. With the luster dust, no, you can go in and shell at kind of 30 degrees, not a problem at all. I don't know, I need to have a look at what the pattern looks like on that. A picture would help. Alex Eats is saying, if I want to use guava paste to make a caramel, would it take the place of the dairy, or would I still want to use cream too? Can't find any reference for it. So fruit caramels will need some fat added to it. So the fat and cream is perfect because in terms of being detectable in terms of taste, probably not going to go. Yeah, it would add lactose to that mix, but you'd need to add a fat, whether that is butter, whether that is chocolate. So dairy butter, cocoa butter, chocolate, or cream, because once the water's boiled off from cream, we'd be left with the emulsified fats, which is why it's so nice to use in caramels. The guava paste, I know the one that you're talking about. I'd make a normal caramel and just deglaze dry caramel with cream, and then add the guava paste in the volumes so you get that big flavour, and just make sure you've got an acid on the back of it. Guava's not particularly acidic, so a few squeezes of lemon juice, maybe some malic acid, citric acid if you really have to, but I wouldn't personally. You need some acidity to bring out the flavour, a bit like mango, right? Guava's not highly perfumed, so it needs a little bit of acidity to get it a bit more detectable. But Alex eats, yeah, I think that'll help you. Mario, I don't think the amount of silk that you add to chocolate would be detectable on an 811. I'd be surprised. Emily, send me a message, and Emily, send me a message. I'm not sure what you're trying to ask me, but send me a message and we can have a chat. I'm going to use my new Easy Temper next week. Can you advise best way to use and what to look for to know the silk is right? Yeah, right at the start of this tonight. It needs monitoring. You can't just turn the temperature on. And for anybody that's got Easy Temper or an incubator, you'll know what I'm talking about here. You kind of need to look at it daily. I would set the machine, I would fill up those little cans and I'd set the machine at kind of 33.4, okay? And I'd have a look at it after 12 hours. If it's too liquidy, or if it's not softened, we want to go up 0.1 or 0.2, or come down 0.1, 0.2. So say we're setting it at 33.4, I'd have a look at it the next day, and if it was a little bit too liquidy, I'd now be setting it at 33.3. I'm not going to do massive jumps because you're trying to nail down, and each cocoa butter is different, and it depends on the cocoa butter that you've got that's going into the incubator. The poorer qualities, the higher the temperature goes in what, you know. And I've tested. When I say that we've tested many varieties of it, that's what I've noticed. And the quality of it isn't always necessarily the price of it. It's looking at it once we made it into sheets so that we could look at how the tensile strength of it as a sheet. Put it in the cans, set it at 33.4, and you need to track up or down it, and it will take you a few days. Generally, after 12 hours, it's, you know, after the first 24 hours, you need to give it a good blend, but you'll still see chunks in there that have melted down. After 48 hours, you can get it much smoother. You've got 2 cans, so we tend to put some in a bag, and then that transfers to the cans just so we can kickstart that process a little bit quicker. But fairly fire and forget, but you need to monitor it. You know, you find that if there's a little void on the top that's for measuring it. Can't lift that off, because I'll lift that off now, it's going to go everywhere. There's a little rubber grommet on the top that's big enough to put a probe in so you can measure the temperature of it. Start at 33.4, that's kind of average, and then you need to look at it. It might take you 3 or 4 days to nail that temperature. If it's too liquid, turn it down. I think the other thing I'd watch is the blue light on the top needs to be on. If you turn the blue light off, next time you open the lid, it will all be liquid, because cocoa butter melts at 32.3. And if your incubator's at 33.4 and you turn off the vent, the temperature can go up, but it's part of the machine. A lot of people turn the blue switch off, and it doesn't work. There he is, XO Chocolates London. How are you, son? Lovely new boxes. Yeah, I know. I thought I'd put those up there tonight. I've had to bring my extras collection forward a week as running out. Lost a day's work this week due to burglary, so really chasing my tail. Loads of press coverage after my awards. I know, I saw that. Burglary, sorry to read that, sorry to hear that. That's kind of not good at all, is it? I hope you have recovered and not too much was taken, Paula. And well done on the award. It's really good. Really good. Do you have to do anything different for fruit fondant, or just add some fruit syrup? Went a bit over with my mint one. How do you mean fruit fondant? As in flavour drops? No, I think the thing, the flavour, adding flavour drops to fondants, I think the only thing that you also need to consider is colour, right? We had a strawberry fondant, but it was white, and it's kind of like missed opportunity there, I think. Thank good for chocolate. Keep us positive in the US. XO Chocolates London. I'm waiting on you telling me when I can. Yes or no. So with Seren's Bright, no backing, stay bright. Yeah. They've got a tiny bit of titanium in them, and what it means is I can spray a layer and I can just go in and shell. And this is where the type A, B and C comes in, so you can make a determination. Type C's, I would say generally don't need backing, because all those little micro-sized flakes cause some opacity. So the shell will be a little bit darker, but not noticeably. If I'd used that one there, if I sprayed Salma's orange, and then we just shelled, we'd see orange, but it'd just be too dark. And what I wanted was something bright, or brighter. And I really wanted to have that silvery with the Hello Sunshine, because I kind of quite like that effect. But that just means that I need to back it, because I chose two colours that would need backing, right? Or I shell them in white, but I specifically want to shell that one in dark because it's going for somebody that can't have lots of sugar, so we're just trying to reduce down. Otherwise, I'd have shelled that probably. I like doing the lemon caramel. It's the lemon ash and lemon zest caramel. I like doing that in Calicut Gold. It works a treat for me. It's on the right side of not being too sweet, but just with a little bit of hint of salt, right? It will give you, Kelly, it will give you, so Seren's Bright, yeah, it will give you some opacity for sure. Yeah, Salford Chocolatier, that if you spray and then you scratch, they need to be really light lines, because what you're trying to do is, if you think about where you scratch, you're trying to pack that void where the line is. So you need to scratch the lines need to be, if you're going to scratch the inside of the mould, they need to be slightly thicker. If they're too thin, you won't be able to compress the silicate mica into it, particularly the gold, the copper, bronze, the bronze, white gold, blue pearl are finer. The gold and the silver are a little bit bigger, which is why they're both called glitter, not luster, right? So might be that. Hello in Iran. So I don't typically freeze my bonbons, but heading out of town and want to make Christmas early, I plan to buy my A4 boxes. Should I also vac seal the boxes 2-3 week period? Nothing wrong with vac packing them. Like, you don't need to. Like, if you could find where are my boxes? There's a lid. If I could find a vac pack bag that would slide into, that would do it. That'd be enough for me. I'm trying to stop air going in and coming out. I don't necessarily need to vacuum them. What I want to do is just make sure they're airtight, so that I'm not getting other flavours and ice build up and all that kind of thing. You can vac pack them, brilliant, but you don't need to vac pack them and then crush the life out of them. Otherwise, just never want to turn that machine on and then look at all your bonbons go. Especially when you know, I've got a chamber vacuum machine, so I have to be really, really careful, because you set that up at 2 bar, you can crush everything that's in there right in one go. But they'll be fine. Yeah, Emily, send that over to me, not a problem at all. You can get my email off the link at the top of my page, so that sounds lovely. Kelly's saying that's what the grommet's for, never knew. It's a little rubber thing that, yeah, it's for measuring the inside, so you don't have to keep opening it. does say that on the instructions. When testing chocolate for shelf life, apart from the obvious visual mould and smell or taste, can a chocolate be bad in a hidden way? Absolutely, of course, because you can't see all bacteria, and you can't see mould spore, and you can't see what's called mildew. It's not always detectable. It's not always molds. Like you can look at food and it looks safe, but that doesn't mean it's safe, right? So, you know, if you left a piece of chicken out overnight, you wouldn't eat it the next day, like, you know that, right? Because you know there would be bacterial growth on it and you can't see it. So I think all bad food hygiene starts with the ones that aren't visible, right? The bacteria and the cross-contamination is not necessarily this physical contamination, chemical contamination, bacterial growth, mold, and other things. So you need to be sure of your processes, right? But you can't always taste. You can't taste if something's bad. You will know if it's bad the next day, or, you know, if it's a handling issue. Symptoms come on between, you know, 6 and 12 hours. And then a different bacteria, the onset time is 16 to 22 hours. And that's how we identify what the bacteria was from the hand. Very often it's handling issues, so poor food hygiene skills, right? Fruit stock. Colour, Stuart, you know, you can add fruit stock to it. I just need to make sure it's well and truly boiled, right? So you've broken any bugs down that's in it. But about to make a spreadsheet of all my colours and their types as a quick reference, unless I missed a master list on your site. Is there a document? I think there is one. I think somebody's done one on the Chocy Chat page. I think there is. Yeah, Paul has done one. I'm sure it's on the Facebook page. Yeah, what is that with Listeria in the US? Listeria and E. coli. And E. coli is a terrible, terrible one, because we, you know, bits per million. You take something like Salmonella, right? So, and it's, you know, it's 220 million. Probably make you poorly, right? Certainly give you some bad kind of stomach cramps, right? So that's bits per million. The challenge with E. coli is it's 10 or 12, not million, single pieces, right? So 10 or 12 single E. coli bacteria will make you absolutely violently ill. So you think how much could be on a, that's how bad it is. You know, 22 million on a bit of chicken, you might get a sore tummy, right? 10 or 12, not million, just 10 or 12 on a bit of chicken, you're hospital. So luckily E. coli is not, you know, when it's identified, people, they go mad. It generally is meats anyway, so, or uncooked meats. Scary. I don't know why the Listeria, I don't know why that's suddenly, I mean, Listeria is almost completely wiped out, and then it just seems to have resurfaced, right? Seems to have resurfaced. When testing for shelf life, what can I do to make sure my chocks are safe? Shelf life, you can do shelf life testing in a couple of ways. One, you can send them away and have that tested, but that still doesn't mean, that'll give you a suggested shelf life. The other thing is, if I wanted to know something lasted 12 weeks, I don't want to check maybe the first 6 weeks. If I think I've got a recipe that would last 12 weeks, I would just make 6 of those, and then I would start checking them at week 7, week 8, week 9, week 10, week 11, week 12. So it's the last 6 weeks that I'd be checking. If I was pretty sure that that recipe lasted 12 weeks, I would probably be checking at week 10 and 11 and 12, 13 and 14 to see where that works. And if I suspect it could go further, that's what I'd be checking for much further on. It's not that it's out of date at week 12, it's like how much further will it go before it's truly out of date. In terms of, you know, you can get your recipes tested and just make sure that as you're making things, it is, you know, super clean, squeaky clean, good food handling, hitting the right temperatures, This is why I'm not anti-ganache. Everybody thinks I'm not anti-ganache, but it is low temperature, and I have my concerns when we start talking about low temperature. I like pralines, gandullas, 0 water, no bacterial growth, and I like caramels, super high heat, ain't nothing growing in that, and when it's boiled to kind of 104, 107, there's virtually no water in it. We can barely get a test reading. Once something reads over, or we just can't get a reading that goes under 0.54. So even something at 0.62, 0.63, 0.64 as an AW, we still know that's good for 9 to 12 months, right? So long shelf life, but there's no exact date. So much more comes into account. Quality of ingredients, how it was stored, how it was delivered, how it was manufactured, where it was stored, how clean was the tub it was stored in, the handling, clean. So that can add just as much bacteria as that can, right? So as well as that. So squeaky clean at every single level. Those are, certainly in hot kitchens, those are always a risk. There was an officer's mess. This goes back to the early 80s. There was an officer's mess dinner where one of the chefs used the same probe on the chickens, the raw chickens, and then went and measured the barons of beef that had roasted off. Everybody at that mess dinner was ill. Every single one, and it was in the number of about 300. And that was a probe. So, yeah, scary. E. coli is the worst thing ever. Caramel ganache shelf life generally 120 days. Caramel ganache 120 days. You make a really good caramel. You make a really good dry caramel, deglaze it with the cream, boil it back to 104, put it over chocolate, emulsify it, blend it all through, cool that down and pipe it. 120 days, no issues whatsoever. There's virtually no water in it. Once you get it up to that 140 amount, because there's no water left in there, any trace of the water and the amount of fat that's in there and the high level of sugar in there, it's good. We add the chocolate to a caramel ganache for a flavour process, but again, chocolate's a long shelf life product, isn't it? So. What time is it? It's gone 9:30. I'm going to go. I'm roasting hot in here. I've got melting tanks on and it's a bit toasted. I will post this one, and I think there's a picture of this, and it says, I did the little tile before we did I hope that's all helped tonight. There will be some stock in place. There will be some stock back in place. I'm slowly getting sorted out this week. I am getting sorted out. It's been a bit of a slog, and we're burning the candle at both ends at the minute, and in the middle it seems some days. So Remembrance Day on Sunday, big part of my life that, as a veteran. So and on Monday, and then I've got classes next week and all sorts of things going on. So Coco's doing fine, by the way. We're playing a game at the minute where she climbs a tree and I rescue her, and then she thinks it's funny and goes back up the tree until I rescue her. So that's been most of this week. I think the other thing is that we seem to have got a very jealous cat, because if she sits with me and one of the girls tries to give me a hug, they get a swipe by a paw. So we've got a very, very jealous cat in the house called Coco. Anyway, everybody have a nice week. Keep going. It's money making time. Keep going. If you're doing long hours, tough. It's all money for you. Keep going. Just keep doing. You're doing amazing. Stop measuring yourself against everything that everybody else is doing. That's ego. Ego is the little voice that tells you you're better than you think you are. What you need is a little bit of humility. Get your head down and get on with the work, because it's your product, your business, and your vision. Do what you want to do. Right? Have a great week, everybody.